Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Batista, the Executive Director of the Institute for Citizen-Centered Service, better known as the ICCS. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on our new Citizen First Analytics and Benchmarking Service. Today's webinar will be presented by my colleagues, Michal Jong, Manager of Research, Analytics, and Benchmarking at the ICCS, and Cody Dodd, Executive Director of Pigeonline, our partners and specialists in simplifying research insights through artificial intelligence that focuses on privacy, accessibility, and explainability. Michal and Cody will present an overview of our new analytics service and provide you with a live demonstration as well. Michal leads our efforts to modernize our research, analytics, and benchmarking services and is working closely with Cody and the Pigeonline team to digitize our services and make them easier and simpler to use by providing quicker and more relevant insights into citizens' satisfaction with public services. Before I turn it over to Michal and Cody, please note that we are recording this webinar. It will be available on our YouTube channel, Citizen First, by the end of this week. You can also visit our website, citizenfirst.ca, for more information about our new service. As an MS Teams live event, you will be able to submit your questions by using the Q&A function throughout the presentation. And we do encourage you to submit your questions while Cody and Michal are presenting. Following Michal and Cody's presentation, we will do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible prior to the end of the webinar. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Michal and Cody. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dan, and hello, everyone. So in just a moment, I will hand it over to Cody from Pigeonline, who will provide you with more details about the new service. But before I do that, I just wanted to spend a few minutes on a brief introduction to the Common Measurements tool, which is the survey instrument that allows its users to take full advantage of the Citizen First analytics platform. Many of you may be already familiar with it, but I wanted to provide some background for those who may know less about this instrument that has been available now for over 2 decades. So what is the Common Measurements tool, or the CMT? The CMT is essentially a bank of over 250 questions in various formats, designed specifically for use by the public sector. It's closely aligned with research such as the Citizen First and Business First studies. And since it was first introduced over 20 years ago, it has gone through a number of revisions to ensure that it is aligned with the current industry standards and the evolving needs and requirements of public sector organizations. The CMT can be used across all levels of government, service areas, and service channels, and allows for a great degree of customization, since it can be used alongside non-CMT items and added to pre-existing surveys. Since it was first introduced, it's been employed by countless organizations at all levels of government, both in Canada and internationally. There are essentially 3 key advantages to using the CMT. It's methodologically reliable and has been tested by a great number of users over the past 2 decades. It allows its users to get actionable insights, identify key drivers and opportunities for service improvement. And last but not least, it enables its users to benchmark their results against those of other organizations. And benchmarking analysis is very much at the core of the CMT service improvement cycle, which focuses on citizen service experience, where it's not just about collecting feedback, but also about obtaining meaningful insights and identifying opportunities for service improvement. And using Citizen First Analytics will help organizations to do just that, to design and implement real improvement to service delivery, something that will then translate into higher levels of satisfaction on the part of the public sector clients. And here you see the components of the CMT question bank. There are specific sections focusing on the service delivery process, access and facilities, communications, as well as individual channels of service delivery. And here I've listed a few examples of core CMT question items. These are based on key drivers of satisfaction identified through other research, such as our Citizens First and Business First studies. And as you can see on your screen, they address some of the key elements, some key dimensions of service delivery, such as overall satisfaction, obviously, as well as staff performance, timeliness, or access. And here is an example of a very short questionnaire based on CMT items. This is actually a customer feedback card that may be used for a quick check of how clients are experiencing in-person services. I would just note that typically CMT surveys are longer than this. So once you've designed your survey, and this is an example of one, once you've designed your survey using CMT items, you'd then field it, and then you'd want to analyze and collect data and report on the findings. And there is a range of available options in this regard, but one that should definitely be considered is comparing the results to those of similar organizations. This can be essential in identifying any existing service gaps. If you see that similar organizations are obtaining much better performance results than you, this may be a signal that you may need to adjust your approaches. And so with this purpose in mind, the ICCS has been providing a benchmarking service to public sector organizations in Canada and elsewhere for over 15 years now. CMT users have been able to submit the results to us, and we would then send them a report containing a detailed question-by-question analysis. In a typical report, we would include up to 3 different benchmark groups in which the results would be compared to those of other organizations based on such criteria as the level of government, service area, or client type. However, this old process to get the benchmarks could take a number of days or sometimes even weeks, depending on the scope of the survey and also depending on how many requests we would be receiving at the ICCS. And the work was done entirely by the ICCS. And the submitting organization would then simply receive a finished report as a PDF document at the end of the process. Now, in order to make the process much faster and more efficient, and to allow organizations greater control, much more say in it, we are now introducing Citizen First Analytics. The new platform will allow for self-service, which means nearly instant access to the results, as well as greater customization and increased number of analytical options, such as driver analysis. And its users are able to create a virtually unlimited number of benchmarking groups based on the criteria of their own choosing. And the service is designed to be extremely easy to use, I should say, as you will see in a moment. It requires no prior expertise in research or related fields. So we've now launched this new service, and I do invite you to contact the ICCS if you'd like to learn more or subscribe. But now I'll hand it over to Cody, who will speak in more detail about the platform and where we currently are with its development. And he will also give you a step-by-step demonstration of its functionalities. So Cody, over to you.
Thank you very much, Michal. Maybe you could go to the next slide. It's a real pleasure to be here, be a guest with the ICCS hosting. These are always great webinars. I, once upon a time, was a member of the webinar, the ICCS back in, I think, 2011. So being a part of the citizen centricity journey has always been really important to me. So I wanted to kind of start with the big picture, the vision, the challenge, so to speak. That effective and efficient collection, analysis, interpretation, and use of data has become an essential challenge for executives and managers. And this understanding and leveraging data has become critical for the designing and delivery of quality services by making operations more cost effective, or even turning the lens internally and looking at employees and productivity. Next slide. But there's a problem. So that data is increasingly available, or we know how to find it thanks to great services like the CMT, but analysis can be the trouble point. Existing enterprise tools are out there for complex analysis, but these tools are often massive, too expensive, they take a long time to get built, and by the time they're implemented across a large government department, many of the frontline teams who really need that data and that insights at a granular level never have access to these systems because they don't have an engineer or they don't understand the complicated environment. Alternatively, there are those who are sticking to traditional research and evaluation techniques that are slow and resource intensive. So they might have an internal team to do analytics that is crunching these numbers, but they have to wrestle with licensing agreements with different tools, and they have to understand those new tools. Some of them need to have a background in statistics or programming to use these things like Excel and SPSS. Third option is some don't bother doing it internally and export it out to a consulting company, and then they have no control over the process or a lot less control, and then they have procurement and everything else. So that's a problem for a lot of organizations. Next slide, please. So the vision is within minutes, any member of your organization can procure, upload, clean, and analyze that data without that requirement of knowing a lot about the most sophisticated tools. And that needs to help them find high impact variables. So in the CMT's case, those core CMT drivers. What is driving satisfaction? What isn't driving satisfaction? And you need to propose which issues need to be addressed first. And this is all done and should be done using automated or increasingly self-service reports. So that allows us to combine the rich experience of Citizen First and ICCS with us as a values-based organization for bringing AI to the fingertips of users. But it's a young and new and therefore exciting project. So next slide, please. So a quick update on who we are as we're joining and helping the ICCS on this journey of bringing insights about your customers to your fingertips. Well, we focus on privacy-based, so that's incredibly important to anyone uploading data. So a strict focus on data sovereignty, right to be forgotten, GDPR, and more, but also ethics-based AI. So some of these tools are increasingly going to be making decisions about how we will make investments and in service improvement, for example. And so we need to understand what are the tools doing in the background. And so we very much focus on keeping that conversation open and growing and dynamic new tools so that users can feel confident about the decisions that these tools are suggesting for them. So next slide. So in essence, the model's pretty simple. You take your data, you might have run an ICCS CMT survey, and you're going to upload it. If you export it as a SAV file format, that's a common one from SPSS, then all the work's already done for you in terms of cleaning. But a lot of you might have old files, Excel files, so we'll take that too and help you clean it as well. You might not know how to go through and tidy up some of these old data. It'll automatically sort of make suggested analysis for you and bring actionable insights, and we're going to show you that in just 1 second. We're also going to be able to, as we develop the journey, integrate with your tools. So you might have reporting visualization tools, you might have other systems. We'd love for this tool to just be able to export right into your existing systems. So that will be coming soon. Next slide. So what does the journey look like? As Michal said, we launched in roughly July of 2020, and we started to bring in early adopters behind the scenes. So there are 7 organizations currently very actively trialing the tool. That means deploying it across their environments, across multiple departments sometimes, and we're using that because we have this vision of bringing the insights to your fingertips. So we thought an important stage is to understand, well, what are those insights that you're currently consuming and you're currently spending so much time to produce? And that's giving us a pathway of next features. So what we show you today is just the beginning. It was benchmarking and drivers analysis. We'll explain what that means in the demo, but there are already requests for more segmentation or looking at results over time. And that's thanks to the organizations joining as early adopters. And so we highly encourage anyone listening today to join that. And we'll be able to share some examples of how to do that. Next slide. So for instance, here's an easy call to action. You could register right now to analytics.citizenfirst.ca, and you can register for a free demo. It'll give you all of what I'll show you. There'll be a sample report, there'll be a tutorial. It'll give you a sense of what the tool looks like. And you'll be subscribed to know when more features are being released. But at this time, that free version won't let you upload new data. But we will follow up after you have registered and try to see what is your journey, what is your data experience, what kind of problems are you trying to solve, and that could, for example, involve giving you a 30-day use of the tool for free. If in return we get to hear what are the features that are most exciting, what would you like changed. So you essentially then get to your feedback gets to directly shape our journey. So that's a way of saying this is just the beginning, what I'm about to show you, and we'd love to hear from you. And the best way to get started is just to register for free, and then we'll be in touch. So from there, I think I'm going to switch to the demo itself. So just give me one moment. All right. So I'm going to assume everyone can see it now. This might be the landing page after you've logged in. The first time you log in, there might be a small tutorial that'll give you a little bit of direction on what the tool's all about, and basically a summary of the things I talked about today. But you can also, in your demo, you'll be able to see a free report. We'll get into that into a second. But what is the tool? Say you have a fresh data set, a survey that you just ran. So I'm going to run a survey file. This is an example of an actual CMT study, but the results have been scrambled, and we'll get back to that in a second. But all I had to do is upload my survey file, and if I don't have the luxury of that nice SAV file, some of us still have nothing but Excel. There's a template you can use that will guide you to making sure your information's in the right format. And then once you've done that, because you're using Excel, there'll be a few more steps, but many of you can skip this step entirely if you use an SAV format. So we're going to go to the next stage, which is just confirm the survey we just uploaded. It's got some data types. In my case, and in the CMT's case, we encourage a 5-point scale. 1 means dissatisfied and 5 means very satisfied. The system detected most of it, but just missed this one. So I'm going to just clean that up. And I've got an ID. And there are other data types, as you can see, including categorical, time-based data. So I'm going to hit OK. And you can select, I'm going to select the demo. I created a sample survey myself in response to satisfaction with COVID. So you can see how dynamic it is to start creating groups and measurement and sharing with each other. But what we're going to do is we're going to see if my data can connect to the ICCS benchmarking demo. So if you're a registered ICCS user, you'll be able to register to the official data. But this is a note that we're going to try to match to demo data for the purpose of this presentation. It's already going to first say, you've uploaded a bunch of questions. You know, we found some matches for you. You can benchmark. So rather than you having to say, I'd like this question, this question, this question to be benchmarked, it'll do it for you. So this is a quick AI that's going to try to find similar worded sentences. It doesn't need to be exact. It gets pretty close. So you'll just confirm, yeah, I'd like to benchmark that. So just give me a second to, I notice that it's getting sometimes it's not knowledge and competent, and this said courteous. I would say that's not really close, so I'm going to turn that one off. So the good news is you're training this environment, which will get better and better at making matches as more and more users join our journey. But it's done pretty well. It's got pretty much all of those. I might want to check if there's a courteous question, but for now I'm going to continue. So you can do it manually too. But remember, Michal said that you want to be able to compare to your peers. So in this case, you want to be able to define who your peers are. So maybe you are external, you deliver services just to businesses, or maybe you're internal. Again, this is just a demo. The real ICCS benchmarking groups will be much larger. Let's say you're in agriculture, so you deliver services to farms, and maybe a few more other pieces of information. You'll have to fill in like when did you run the survey, and some other information will help you compare to your peers. So I have just now spent a few minutes uploading an Excel data set, a survey that someone ran, and I've cleaned it all up. Great. What does that mean? Well, now you can run analysis really easy. All you do is connect to that data set. So this is the one we just uploaded. And it's showing you your data, your survey you ran. We're going to run some analysis. There's currently two main ones we're going to focus on, but the journey of analytics is rich. We're experimenting with text and time, and we're experimenting with performance across crosstabs. But we're going to focus on these two because these are the ones that the CMT has been driving value for organizations for a long time. We'll start with drivers. So what's happened now is the system is going to try to run a special kind of analysis where you're trying to predict of all of the survey questions, which one, if I improve, will improve an outcome question like overall satisfaction. Notice it found a nice outcome question for us automatically, but you can change. You can switch and do any kind of drivers to any CMT matched questions. So it's going to tell you that of all of the things you should focus on, clear language is driving up to 13% of your satisfaction. Being informed of what to do, and this, if you have custom question text, you can change the text. And this priority matrix is bundling them across areas that are driving outcomes like overall satisfaction versus your overall performance. So in this case, our customers were happy with our fairness, but they weren't so happy with our clear language because it's further to the left, it's closer to the bottom. But clear language is driving satisfaction. So not only are people not happy, it's very important. So that's now a priority. In fact, it's summarized it for us. It's saying these questions, and notice because I haven't labeled it, it's dynamic. If I go back to the data set and label some things better, that was just the product of my data set I found. It'll be dynamic and update, but you can change it. So I now know exactly what to invest in to improve my performance. So I might say, that was a really good analysis. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to do a benchmarking analysis. All right. So benchmarking analysis is even easier. All I had to do is flip on the benchmarking analysis section, and it's automatically matched me and my questions to those groups. Remember, I picked the ICCS demo. You could create internal benchmarks, but the ICCS CMT, or so the Citizen First CMT benchmarking group is a rich one with over 80 entities or benchmarks in it. So you'll be able to compare across far richer number of users. But in this demo, you could see, for example, I'm doing okay on overall satisfaction. It says good. My mean is only 5% below the mean, but I am below the mean. I'm seeing that all groups are a bit better than me. In fact, all businesses are better than me. So that's an area to focus on. But I am outperforming in terms of knowledgeability. Let's go to that clear language because that was a driver. Remember, it was not only that a driver and not only was our performance low, but we're also not performing very well against our peers. Ding, 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 ding. Clear language is now becoming clearly something that's problematic with my organization across different levels of analysis. But I want more details, so I'm going to save that to a report, something I can send to my team. I can share it. I'm going to first show you the report. It's now going to produce a visual report that you can share to your partners or export to PDF that will highlight the same information and will give you question by question scores. So compared to all groups in the benchmarking database, here's how well I'm doing. And you can see, for instance, who's organization 5. Well, they're a external service, emergency services. They're maybe not my best comparator, so I'm not overly concerned. But maybe there are others that are a bit like, here's another agriculture organization, and they're outperforming me. So I might be curious. You could make requests to be anonymously connected if both parties agree, so you can start to learn from each other. You could also go further down instead of all groups and look at how you compare just to other businesses, and you can see we're a little bit behind there. But like I said at the beginning, this is just the start. So there are time series analysis, there's segmentation. So you want to be able to know across these categories like clear language, which stood out, is there any demographic that is missing or outperforming or underperforming. So that's coming next. Or across time, how are we doing on some of these? So I wanted to end on that note as a way of saying, this is why it's really exciting for anyone to go sign up today for the free version. And in the process, we'll reach out and maybe you can play around with the tool behind the scenes, get access to some new features, shape the development and give us some ideas and some types of analysis you think are very, very valuable. And I think that would be a fun journey to be on together. So again, it's just the beginning, but it's such an honor to be able to share this. And I guess I'll turn it now over to the team for some questions and answers. Is that right?
Yeah, that's great, Cody. Thank you very much for the presentation, Michal, as well, for walking us through. Again, we encourage everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to post them to the Q&A section of today's webinar. While we're waiting to see if any of our attendees have some questions they'd like to ask, perhaps, Cody, maybe I could ask you kind of your thoughts from a general point of view in terms of where you see all of this going. I mean, as you mentioned, and at the start, in terms of your role that you played in the ICCS, specifically with the Common Measurement Tool and the benchmarking service, working alongside Michal, to where you are today, and I guess your perspective, having been both inside the ICCS and the role that we play, and now the work that Pigeon Line is doing. Where do you see all of this going? Because you mentioned earlier that one of the challenges is that it's certainly not a lack of data, right? I mean, we've got all these data points, but it's how to manage it, right? And how to sort of, derive out those actionable insights. And I think most organizations, those that don't have perhaps the capacity or necessarily the competencies may feel a bit overwhelmed. So kind of, where is all of this going? How can you manage your way through this, right? What are you kind of seeing from all of the work you've been doing, and certainly even beyond Canada? So if you could talk to that for a bit, that would be great, Cody.
Oh, happy to, yeah. So from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is, like you said, there's all this data, but we don't know what to do with it. And the traditional approach to solving that problem was hire a big engineering team or outsource it to a large consulting team. That takes time, costs a lot of money. They do it manually anyway, so they have overhead, and they're going to pass that cost down to you. So I think what's increasingly happening is we're bringing suggestive insights rather than having an analyst do all the work themselves. We're letting a system start to condense information for them, make determinations on what the results are, but letting a user agree or disagree, remove, edit, which further trains these kinds of tools. And what that leads to is, I hope, more organizations being able to self-serve large amounts of interesting insight by letting a tool that can find segment outliers, demographic outliers, for instance, or can calculate 3 different types of drivers. So for those listening in who know a bit about statistics, the driver section that I showed you that it's going to run and try to find a prediction, we actually run multiple models, including random forests, naive Bayes, and we return the one that has the lowest error. And again, that can be done by professional organizations, but that's going to take a lot of time. They're going to either need that, I'm just going to switch out of that slow. Oh, there it goes. They're either going to need the time to train or the expensive systems, and they still need to know the types of analysis. Even if they have the greatest systems, they still need to know what driver's analysis is and find it themselves. So I think the short answer, in my opinion, could be very much the self-serve. And maybe another way to answer that is I get the opportunity to share the story of one of our adopters who's happy for us to talk a little bit about the journey, which is the region of Peel, is doing a lot of exciting work to see if they can bring these at your fingertips analytics directly to their organization, rather than having to have a pool of organizations you can outsource that analysis to, which creates a lot of division between organizations who need data and insights today versus waiting for results from an external provider. I think soon, and this is the test that Peel's doing for us, is can this tool be enabling insights for any organization without that expertise, and can that be a seamless journey, and what buttons are too many, what visuals are too cluttered. That's a big part of getting there. I don't know if that's helpful answer, but I think that's exciting.
That is great, Cody, and we do have some questions coming in, so I could always monopolize the time. Enjoy our conversations, but let me start off with another question here. Our first question from our attendees. Cody, can you describe the use cases you are working with regard to the 7 organizations that you mentioned?
Sure, absolutely. So there's of those. 3, for instance, are government organizations that are trying to see if they can take the CMT kind of data and get to insights with as minimal time and effort as possible. So it's almost a test of, can it be done in 20 minutes? We got the data, can we get the report quick? And why? Because they want to be able to create these reports regularly, maybe weekly. If it only takes 20 minutes the first time they try, it might get even faster. And it's a nice, and they can drop reports on their executive's desk, so to speak, in that 20-minute time span. So there's a couple organizations doing that. Others are trying to, along with compare to the CMT database, they want to see if they can also compare internally. So creating internal benchmarks. Do my different departments outperform each other versus the CMT database? So that's another use case. We've got an academic organization. It's a university in the University of London network. I am just myself wrapping up my PhD at the London School of Economics in the same network, as well as to research companies that provide these kinds of reports to organizations. So it's that outsourcing option you used to have to do. They're also realizing, well, we spend so much effort on this analysis as well. We would love to be able to offer faster analysis to our partners. So they're exploring, can they basically create these kinds of reports for their government partners as quickly as possible too. And they're also experimenting with new types of analytics. So missing here is simple crosstabs and segmentation analysis, which will be coming thanks to our partners. And that's actively being tested by these 7 organizations. So now, again, the process was the same as we described before, where they just signed up for the free account. We reached out to them. We had a conversation about their experience. They said they're excited to try to do this or that, and we set them up with that. So that's become the journey with those. That's the kind of high level. I'm sure I'm missing some of the exciting details, but and I can dig up some further if there's further questions around that.
That's great, Cody. Thank you. That certainly gives us a good appreciation of the work that's currently underway. The next question we have here, and I think I'm going to ask Michal to address this as well, because it relates to both CMT and, of course, the benchmarking side. But and you might have some thoughts on this as well, Cody. So the question is this: Do we have access to every survey participants' answers, or just our own organization? So Michal, perhaps you could start by clarifying kind of how, again, the CMT, how it works, how we manage that process when working with our clients, and then the benchmarking service. And maybe, Cody, you could speak to the the issue of privacy, right, and how we safeguard data and from our various clients. So Michal, please.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, any CMT user and any organization with access to the Citizen First Analytics website, they do, the data that they submit is confidential, and it's never linked to their identity. Any scores that they achieve, it's never linked to their identity without their approval. Now, in the actual reports, and if you look at the screen even right now, you will see that we do list within each benchmarking group, you would get scores for each organization, each benchmark, essentially. You would get every single benchmark and a basic description of the organization, of the service that is involved. But obviously, again, that would not be linked to the actual identity of the organization. So the answer is yes. A typical report would include a benchmark group, which would include all of the data that we have in the system, and those scores, the averages from each submitted survey and so on would be listed as part of individual benchmark groups. But again, those would not be listed to the actual identities. So I think that's kind of the broad answer. I'm not sure, Cody, if you would like to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So privacy is absolutely core to our interest as a technology team too. It was one of the main reasons we started our journey, is because there's often this belief that to use AI, you need to give up rights to your data because you need to put it on a public cloud. Well, none of this, first of all, is on a public cloud. It's all on nationally hosted servers. So there's no use of AWS or Azure. And with that said, every time you upload a data set, this object here at the top, that is encrypted and only accessible by you or who you share with. And even at the ICCS, even at both the ICCS and Pigeonline as technologists, we see an encrypted file, we can't have access to it. If you share with us for the purpose of troubleshooting, we would temporarily be able to see it. But if you revoke that, it's gone and right to be forgotten. If I decide to try to ask the ICCS to clean up some of the files, say maybe you uploaded some and you're concerned, don't hesitate to reach out to the ICCS, because once you delete a file, that encrypted file disappears and all benchmarking related to that file is gone on all existing reports too. So if you send a dynamic link to someone, that original person's data is gone. So right to be forgotten is critically important too. So to summarize, the file you upload is encrypted. There's only accessible by your organization and no third party, let alone us. We don't even have access to that data. And if you delete your data, it's clean from the system, because that's an important principle for privacy, increasingly so. So I'm not sure if that's helpful.
That's great. Thank you both, Cody and Michal, for that. The next question, en fait, c'est en français. Avez-vous le même service en français? So let me take a stab at that. The response is that we are working to have a French equivalent of this service available. On espère d'avoir le service disponible en français. On espère pour l'année prochaine. But what I would say is perhaps, Cody, maybe you can speak to the efforts, because obviously here in the Canadian market, having the service also available in French, and certainly from our perspective, the ICCS is imperative, and we are working on that. But even beyond the French language, I know that Pigeonline has also been considering how to move forward with regard to other languages, because this, in fact, is a global product. So maybe, Cody, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the work that you folks are doing with regard to translation.
Absolutely. So we are a Canadian company headquartered. So while we're global in our vision, the most important community we want to really develop our first year of this young application with is the Canadian market. And as a result, French becomes our most important second language. But as you hinted, we've got Arabic in the pipeline and others as well. But the good news is French is not far away at all. So our AI tools. So remember when we were uploading a data set, a tool was suggesting what matches are there. So in French, that will be fully functional, and that's already done. And even other kinds of advanced tips that the tool is doing, where it's looking through language to try to make guesses about data types, that's all fully functional on the back end. We're very excited about that. So as a result, to be completely honest, our next step is simply translation. So but we want high quality. And so as a result, we expect probably near the end of fall or into winter, we've got it deployed with full French. But users can use it en français today. It might not do perfect with guessing matches. So you might know the translation yourself and make a manual match. I'll show you an example of that. And you'll be able to run drivers and it'll benchmark for you just the same. You might just have to run, here, I'll show you one sec. When you're in this stage, match global questions. When I let the computer match for me, until we launch the Foley, which is, like I said, end of fall probably, you can just try to make a match yourself and it'll show you you might know your question en français, and then you could just select the official translation yourself. So you'd have full functionality. Now the problem would be your report would still be in English. So you could get all the results right away with a little bit more work than everyone else, which is unfortunate. But we want to prioritize the report, the AI behind the scene, and the full tool by end of fall into the winter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great, Cody. And again, just to reiterate that our aim, as you've pointed out, Cody, is to have a quality product available en français for 2021. So as you said, ideally, I mean, it's in progress now. There is some limited capacity, but we want to ensure that the quality and the integrity is there as it is in the English version. So again, I think cautiously optimistic, time frame would be certainly in the first quarter of 2021.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Moving right along, we've got a couple more questions, and I'm going to actually combine the next two because they're related to basically formats and what is sort of within the realm of possible. So the first one asks, is it possible to get the charts, for example, the matrix in PowerPoint? I assume the question is about, can it be imported or exported to PowerPoint? And then the second one is related to what kind of formats can we export the data to? So I guess, Cody, I'll pass this one over to you.
All right. So in its current form, just letting this load, you can already, you could already export to PDF, and it will be in the shape of not a PowerPoint, but in the shape of a normal letter. I would have to change my screen share to be able to show that. But to your point, and on that journey we're on, our next stage, now that we've got some basic levels of analysis, like some of the most important core levels of analysis, I should say, in place, is we want to know what are the formats folks like to see and use. And in that case, we're going to, maybe some people want the same information, but when you export it to PDF, it's in PowerPoint shape instead of like a letterhead shape, which is easy for us to do if organizations think that that's an important customization. But it would be in PDF, but it'd be the shape of your PowerPoint. As far as us actually exporting PowerPoint or Word doc, that's a little bit further down the road. We wanted to make sure the analysis quality was as strong as possible. And then we wanted to gauge what are people's preferred formats, because some out there want it to be fed into their visualizers like Power BI. Others want an exported PDF. Others want to be able to edit it. And so they'll want to copy and paste parts. So that's exactly the questions we want to hear when you connect and you reach out to us. And by the way, whenever you're logged in, you could always send a message. And if it's office hours, we're always available. Hi. So it'll find a random employee, and Guy Gordon, who's leading our government relations, for example, got pegged. So now if he's playing around on his computer, he's going to be able to respond to us. So become a member of the community and tell us what formats is most important to you, is I would say for now. But for now, it's PDF in letter shape. Or you can just share the link, and they could just view it as a digital link.
Excellent. Thank you, Cody. The next question I'll direct to Michal, and the question is regarding the number of Canadian municipalities that have used or are using the CMT.
Absolutely, that is a good question. So it's difficult for me to, I guess, quantify this number, because over the past couple of decades we've had a large number of municipalities involved with the CMT and using it. Sometimes municipal organizations are using it for a certain period, and then they kind of wait for the next survey. It may not be annual, it may be a bit less frequent than that. But I would say on the whole, in Canada, just if I were to estimate the number of municipalities that have used the CMT, it would be, I would say, I would say 30, 40 and up, more than that probably throughout the history of the CMT. And like I said, it's not always something that goes year to year. So there are some changes depending on municipality, depending on their approaches. But yes, and a significant proportion of the database that we've had over the years came from municipal organizations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michal. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving forward because we still have quite a few questions. So the next one is a good one, and either one of you could respond to this. Can this be used for employee surveys as well? So Cody or Michal,
Sure.
whichever one of you wants to.
Why don't
in, yeah.
Why don't I start and
Sure,
let Cody speak to that? So first of all, yes, absolutely. CMT from day one was designed to be used in both internal and external surveys, and it has been used successfully in employee surveys. And yes, absolutely, the same goes for the service that we are currently launching. So that's the basic answer. I'm not sure, Cody, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, that would have been my answer as well. So if your question, you could see overall satisfaction with the performance of employees or overall satisfaction with internal services, for example, is very important. But we're always looking to see what's the future of employee engagement drivers as well. So it's a journey we can continue to expand together. But for now, brilliantly, the CMT has worked great for certain types of employee engagement or internal service quality measurement.
Thank you both. Next question. Can a GBA plus gender and other diversity variables be included in the data and analyzed with this system?
So great news is we usually release every 2 or 3 weeks a new update. And the next one, so right around the corner, is going to actually follow along your journey. If you produce a report that says clear language is where you're not performing, behind the scenes, we're going to automatically check all of your demographic questions and find an example of a demographic that is either outperforming the rest or, more importantly, underperforming. So if we have a clear language problem, is it a certain type of customer that has that language problem? So that'll be automatically detected, A, or B, if you have a hypothesis yourself about a certain demographic and you want to take your analysis, but then compare it, gender to gender or age group to age group or income level to income level, you'd be able to do that too. So the great news is that's scheduled for the next release in likely mid or early September. So more analytics coming every couple of weeks, and that's next. So great question.
Thank you, Cody. That's great. It's now 1:47 p.m. in the East, so I just wanted to give our attendees the heads up that we will be closing up the Q&A session in a couple of minutes. So this is your last opportunity. If there are any questions you want to post, we still have a few more to work our way through. So just get those questions in now, if you could, please. The next question, and I guess again, either Michal or Cody, or you guys can share this one. How do I use the tool to generate organizational scores using a 0 to 100 point? I just lost the question at despair. I was reading, so let me just go back to published here. Sorry, just disappeared from my screen. How do I use the tool to generate organizational scores using a 0 to 100 point scale instead of the average score between 1 to 5?
Maybe I'll open this up and then let Cody speak to that as well.
Perfect.
And just to say that, typically, organizations do, using the CMT, they use the 1 to 5 scale to report on the results. But yes, there are organizations who choose to use a different approach, use a 0 to 100 scale. And we've worked with those organizations before. And yes, this is something that I guess Cody and I have discussed already. as kind of the next stage, something that we could implement, sooner rather than later, because we do realize that there are various ways in which organizations want to report the results, and definitely, the development of the service and the input that we get on this would be really essential in allowing us to really build something that would work for everyone, for every single organization. But I'm not sure, Cody, is there anything else that you would add?
Yeah, great news is thanks to those conversations, thanks to the same question emerging from many of those 7 early users, is it's in the same next release. So woohoo, that's great. That means, what I mean by that is 2 things. One is you can be able to just flip using an edit button or something similar to percentage likelihood or top box or overall average from 0 to 100. So you'll have different options for how to display the results. So that's one. Secondly, is we're also making compatible a lot of the services for those who have chose to use a different scale, maybe 1 to 7, 1 to 11. Now, how that impacts benchmarking, we're still exploring, but we would love to be able to enable people to do the same kinds of analysis over CMT questions, even if they've changed the scales, and some have done that. So both of those are coming in the next launch, again, say version 1.4 technically for those counting versions, which is going to be beginning or middle of next month. So great question.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, the next question, I think we'll direct this one at Michal. How many benchmarks do you have that match the 200 questions in the CMT question bank?
Yes, that's a great question. So in the beginning, I said, when I was doing the intro to the CMT, I said that the question bank contains over 250 different question items, and they're all in different formats. So we have open-ended questions, we have questions with different scales, and so on. Right now, the questions that you can benchmark are all using 5-point Likert scale. So only those questions can be currently benchmarked. So there are significantly fewer than 200. Questions of that type. And to be honest, I don't have the exact number. I would estimate that maybe this is something, Cody, that you have. I don't have at my fingertips the exact number of questions that we currently have in our database. And it would be difficult for me to estimate. So, obviously I would invite whoever asked that question to contact us separately, and I can probably provide a more exact answer, unless, Cody, you have that number at your fingertips.
Sure, I seem to recall roughly, this is off the top of my head, but I've played with the data going all the way back to 2011, long before Pigeon Line's days. I seem to recall that those actively using CMT questions, they're about 100, so about half of those 200. But of those, I would say another about third are used by only a small number because they're very specific, about very specific types of service experiences. So that leaves, I would say, of the 100, that leaves about 30 or so to 40 that are widely used and regularly used. Specifically, you'll have to jump in, Michal, the name for it, but you have the sort of top 10 suggested CMT questions, the timeliness and eligible staff. Those are used by a very, very large chunk of the users.
Absolutely. So if I may add, so we call them the core CMT questions, and at the moment there are 16 of them. And there are some additional questions outside of the core group which are fairly frequently used. And I can say that those questions, the core questions, basically, based on the studies that we have, they're responsible for about 80% of all variance in satisfaction rating. So those are the key questions that organizations should be asking of their clients anyway. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you both. Great teamwork on answering some of these questions. Really good questions. One last question before we start to wrap things up. And again, this one I think is an interesting one because we have focused this webinar pretty much on sort of after the survey, right? After the field work has been done and really sort of the data, the analytics and benchmarking side of things. This question is about what are the main ways that organizations administer their survey. So I'm going to, I guess, say that this is really about how do people actually conduct their survey. So maybe Michal, you could start, and Cody, and kind of what you've seen, the trends over the years in terms of how public sector organizations actually go out to collect data.
Absolutely. So in my experience, it really depends on the organization, obviously, their size, the resources, and the channels that they use, right? So for instance, if they're primarily delivering services by telephone or online, they will probably most likely focus on that channel, and very often they would use multiple channels, right? So if someone is getting service through the online channel, that's that very likely many organizations would try to reach them through that channel. And I would say that, telephone has historically been popular among certain organizations, but definitely online, also in person in some cases, although not to the same extent. But I would say telephone, online, those are probably currently the most frequently used in my experience. But again, it does depend on the organization, their specific needs, the way they provide services, and so on. But yeah, I'll leave it to Cody to maybe add a little bit on this.
Sure. To overgeneralize, there's almost like two camps. There's those that the main purpose that they want is quick wins, quick insights. And they might only have 30 regular customers. If there might be a very intimate kind of service, for example. Well, they don't necessarily want to put out a massive survey across multiple channels. They might use a tool. They might have their internal IT services might already have a survey tool available to them, so they should go check. Often they do, and if they don't, they're out there. Even things like SurveyMonkey. If you have a small number of users and you just want quick insights, those are available. There's even free versions of tools like these, so do look to your IT team. But then there's the other side of the spectrum, where it's organizations that want to implement this across segments, across service centers, and these are the ones that, like Michal said, might do multiple channels. So they might have a text message survey as soon as someone leaves a survey environment. Now that might involve, again, hopefully the IT department has some support solutions for pulling out, for getting SMS text messages out there. But if not, if you're in a department where you just really don't know what options are available to you, reach out to us and we'd be happy to explore things for you as well. But yeah, I've seen it everywhere from quick win, there's free stuff out there, or very minimal effort stuff, versus much more advanced, but that would hopefully be driven with the support of your organization. But if not, let's reach out and let's chat. I don't know if that's helpful.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. Michal, Cody, any final words that you would like to share with our attendees?
Absolutely. I would just invite everyone to contact us if they have any questions about the new service, and I would be happy to respond, and I would be happy to speak to them, speak to their teams, and see how we can work with them on making the service work for them. So yeah, so that's my final word.
Thank you. Cody.
All right. I would first like to say thank you to the great host and the great event, but also as a key takeaway, go register. That's another great next step. So if I can say anything, it's go log on to analytics.citizenfirst.ca, get the free tool that lets you to play around, and then we'll be in touch and see if we can get you some sort of trial where you have actual full features.
Excellent, gentlemen. Wonderful. Great calls to action. I'd like to thank you both, Michal, Cody, for an excellent webinar session today on our new Citizen First Analytics and Benchmarking service. It was a pleasure to have both of you on today, and I want to thank all the attendees. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. And again, please do not hesitate to reach out for any questions that we were not able to get to today, or any comments, or how we could help with your challenges when it comes to being more citizen-centric. Be sure to visit our website at citizenfirst.ca. And with that, I'd like to thank you all and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Take care.